Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lipstick Podcast, and this is episode number... Insert title here, because I don't know which one.
I called it 48. Greg probably disagrees, and he's the one who's going to upload it. So
no, we're so far in advance. I don't think this is episode 4. You know what? I have no idea what episode we're on.
Well, it's on mic now. It's got to be episode 48. Sorry.
Well, this episode, let's cut, start over. Well, this episode is about the band Hole, their album Celebrity Skin, which came out in 1998.
Did you bring just the CD case, Steve?
Yeah, because I was listening to just this. I was listening to CD.
All right. Are you going to, introduce yourself at all?
Oh, me? I'm Steven.
Guitarist for Lipstick. I'm other Steven, bassist for Lipstick. Also guitarist for Lipstick.
I'm Greg. I played a single note on the last Lipstick album.
Guitarist for Lipstick.
Yeah, guitarist
I was
for
say
Lipstick.
I'm not a guitarist for Lipstick, so just because I played one song.
No, once you're in
Yeah,
for life.
it's like P-Funk and a cult combined.
Okay. All right. I guess then I am the new leader of Lipstick.
Yes.
And
New band leader Steve Edwards.
and leader.
Yeah, all of my power in the band has since been ceded to the Steves.
Yep.
First thing I will do with my authority is to get rid of all the other members. So
You know, I did that.
That's fair. We've been really holding this band back.
I did that in a band once, and then they just quietly went ahead and kept on recording songs under the band name without me in Japan.
okay, well then that means
I'm calling you out,
Black Flag?
Vink and Peso. You guys are still fired from Elite Band. It's just me and Thor.
Wow, this intro is really going
terrible,
places.
awful.
Really going places.
Back to this record though. So, probably not going to be too big of a surprise once we start talking about it that I'm a pretty big fan of this. I don't know much about the making of it though, and so I didn't even know who the producer was. The producer is Michael Beinhorn, and I should have done some research to figure out who he is because
I did some research on this.
Okay, I'm not familiar with his name at all.
Yeah, so basically, you know, like all those really shitty Fuel albums.
I know a Fuel album.
Yeah, so you know
two Fuel songs.
All right, so basically, like,
I know two Fuel albums now that I think of it vaguely.
I looked at his production credentials and thought, wow, this guy is terrible. And then I read about how he produced the album, like, wow, this guy is really terrible. What an awful producer. Like the way he treated the band, just all the shenanigans. Like, yeah, this is a good CD. I actually was pleasantly surprised with it. But yeah, what an awful producer.
The way he treated Hole, or the way he treated...
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's a good CD because the producer was a jerk to the band and demanded they deliver him a quality product regardless of what they wanted to do.
And also got hired guns and replaced the band members that sucked.
Right, exactly.
The thing is, and see, I didn't know that was going to be one of the points I was going to bring up. I was, as you know, especially as I was listening to it right now, I was like, I guarantee most of this is not played by the band.
Yeah. I mean, the original drummer, she just released a book, I think, this year about her, basically her biography, her life experiences, being the drummer for Hole, with a lot of time dedicated to this album. And, when she showed up and they, played the record, and like, those aren't the parts I recorded. What the heck?
All right, so I'm looking at this dude's production credits. So we've got Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Which ones?
Yeah, which...
Man, it doesn't matter. They're all shit.
No,
I mean,
that's
because
not true at all.
Marilyn Manson.
There's a big difference between...
Korn, Fuel.
I have to know which albums, because and even with Korn, there's a huge difference in quality of Freak on a Leash to...
That one that they did with Skrillex.
The Uplift Mofo Party Plan. Mother's Milk.
Oh, that's the RHCP album.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Oh,
the early RHCP that people like.
Yeah.
As compared to, say, Californication, which is the bad album.
All right.
I think a lot of people like California.
Californication is the
All right,
best.
so typically when our episodes are more coherent and better flowing, we go around the panel and talk about our history with the artist and album in particular. So as I'm going to start to usurp the Steves and take back control of Lipstick in this podcast.
It's a coup!
Yeah, it's a coup. Greg is going to be a power-hungry dictator in Lipstick. That has never once happened in the history of this band. So, Steve Edwards, let's start with you and your history with Hole in this album. Then we'll go with Steven Smith, who I assume has more of a history with this band than I do. And then we'll close out with me.
Okay. I love the band Hole, and I would say that Courtney Love was probably one of my first young crushes, and I was
Gross.
pretty obsessed with her. Not that I'm not still, because I still am still very infatuated. You can say gross because now that warrants that opinion. I suppose.
All of the cool kids have moved on to Frances Bean.
Frances Bean is an attractive lady, but Courtney Love is my OG, and she shall remain in my heart forever. And this is, of all the podcasts I've been on, besides the Dookie one, this is the first time that we've done a record that I have had since it very first came out in '98. And this was the first Hole album I ever owned. I knew some of their other stuff previously, so I didn't really realize how big of a departure this is, and we can get more into that as we talk about the songs. But this is obviously much more poppy than the previous record, and I think that has to do with the production, which is why I was interested in knowing more about the producer. But
not interested enough to do any research
that's
beforehand.
true, and
Not
entirely
interested to read the Wikipedia article
yeah,
like I
it's,
did.
well, completely accurate.
That's called research.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that is the bare minimum amount of research, and he wasn't.
And
even
I
willing
didn't
to
do any of it.
Look, there's a lot of words on any given
There's-
Wikipedia article.
There are many words, and
a lot of them are super
I-
boring.
didn't read a single one of them, other than none of them. And that is my history, because I don't remember where I was at. You go now.
All right. I'm Steve S. And so my history with Hole is I grew up in rural Wisconsin, where the one modern rock radio station just didn't play any Hole. I don't know why. Probably because modern rock radio was a sausage feast when I was a youngster. So I wasn't super familiar with Hole, other than that it was, Kurt Cobain's wife's band, and that she had probably murdered him and stuff. And
But
so
you got to forgive her for that, though.
I
Come
mean,
on,
he
it's
did deserve it.
20-something years. No, he didn't deserve it. I'm just saying, but
anyway, so
Any attempts for me to save this podcast has failed.
So I, never really was super into the band until as an adult I started to kind of revisit them. I, watched a couple of their music videos and was like, yeah, this is actually pretty all right. And then, how did this end up happening? Okay, so, Steve Edwards and I were in an alt-rock band called Blue Matches, and whenever we were trying to, pitch it as a for fans of, I kept on saying, well, I mean, we're kind of like the Distillers, but not as heavy. And so when we finally got a station going on Pandora, or we finally got our music on Pandora, I, of course, seeded a station with us, and then it became the rule that I would only thumbs up songs that were by punkish bands fronted by women not from the United States, which meant that Brody Dale got a pass, so I kept on giving Distillers songs thumbs up until it started playing Hole songs, and I was like, oh, I like all these Hole songs. This band is pretty cool. And then I listened to the They Might Be Giants song about that last Hole album, and I got really excited when we were like, all right, let's do that Hole album. And then I saw it was this one instead of Live Through This, and I was like, oh, all right. And I listened to it a couple times this week and was like, we should have done Live Through This instead.
I think Celebrity Skin is actually my favorite.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go next. I realized as we were going through our episodes, there have been plenty of female players on the albums that we've discussed, but we hadn't done an album fronted by a female artist. I realized as we've been going through our episodes, and I wanted to diversify and do something different, and I thought, oh, we could do, Stevie Nicks, or we could do Joan Jett, or Pat Benatar, or Vixen. I thought of all these female acts that I liked. I'm like, what? You know what? Let me go and pick someone I'm not as familiar with, try something a little bit different. And then I remembered on all the episodes where Steve Edwards was like, oh, Courtney Love, that's my girl. And I'm like, you know what? That is a female artist I remember not really liking, not really caring for, kind of actively disliking Hole, because I remember hearing Celebrity Skin on the radio and thinking, wow, this is another terrible song. Please turn off the radio. I hate all music, growing up in the 90s.
Oh my gosh, what a failure.
But now, revisiting it, knowing that all of her best songs were in fact written by Billy Corgan, your favorite songwriter.
So I'll get into my thought. My opinion on that song has warmed slightly, but my knowledge of Hole before this was knowing the song, but not realizing that was Courtney Love, just knowing the song, hearing it on the radio, thinking it sucked. And my knowledge of Courtney Love was just, MTV being on in the house and just her being
Amazing.
an absolute train wreck, just all the interviews and just all the paparazzi stuff with celebrities like her, where I'm just like, wow, why is this person famous? She just looks like an utter train wreck of a person. And to be completely fair, I thought the exact same thing of Tommy Lee of Motley Crue when I was
Yeah.
that age. And I didn't realize they were from bands. I just thought they were people that were famous for some random reason. I didn't realize Courtney Love was a musician. I didn't realize Tommy Lee was a musician. I just thought they were both white trash and just awful.
They're famous because they wrote music, and then they did drugs because they were rich and famous, and then their lives were train wrecks because they did a lot of drugs.
That's not completely true because Courtney did drugs way before she got famous.
Oh, that's fair.
And hey, so did Tommy Lee.
'Cause
So really, Motley Crue, Hole, essentially the same band.
They're basically the same.
But
I mean, both
Nikki
of them,
Sixx
both
and-
of them sent the rhythm section to work with Billy Corgan in later years.
yeah, so there we go.
Who doesn't though?
But what I would say is, when I listened to this album, I wasn't really expecting much, and it was actually a pretty pleasant to listen. My
It could be a
apologies.
present.
Yeah, but
it's
no,
a
it was-
present to you.
I didn't realize that Hole was a power pop band. I'm like, oh, sweet, it's like Badfinger, except not as good as Badfinger. But hey, I'll take shitty Badfinger over grunge. So I was pleasantly surprised with this album.
Well, they were a grunge band, and then that's what I was saying.
They sold out,
Yeah.
and thank goodness they did, because I enjoyed the CD.
They were a grunge band, and then Chris Lord Alge fixed them.
Dude, and I didn't realize that either. Looking at the credits, that's why this album sounds so good, because it's one of my favorite sounding from this era, and it's because it was mixed by Chris and Tom Lord Alge.
And
Yeah.
also, I didn't realize this when I picked this album. I just picked a random Hole album. That Billy Corgan was a very big presence on this album, helping write a lot of the material, playing on some of the tracks. So I was like, oh wow, I did not know that Billy Corgan was like. This kind of is another Pumpkins episode for us, essentially.
Well, in a recent interview, Courtney said that she's talking about the song "Celebrity Skin," and she was like, "Well, all he did was write the main riff to that." I'm like, "Well, that's kind of
You mean like
song.
the big hook?
Yeah, that's like the
All
song.
he did was write the hook.
Yeah.
No big D. And the drummer on this is, I think, the drummer for Journey now, Dean Castronava or something. Basically, so what I read about the producer, Michael Beinhorn, whoever the drummer is for Hole, I forget her name. I guess he was just a total asshole to her. And so when she was doing like pre-production recording for the album, he just did not want to use her at all. So he would have her play for like 12 hours at a time, and then would just mute her while he was in the mixing room, and would just read the newspaper, tell her she was doing great, and then created a special compilation for Courtney Love to listen to of just her worst takes, and be like, "You can't use her on the album. She's a piece of shit. We gotta get a ringer. We gotta get this guy who's gonna join Journey in like 10 years. He's gonna knock this album out of the park."
That's a weird way to describe somebody.
It's pretty impressive though when you know that that's going to happen.
Yeah, when
right?
you can,
Give
when
that
you can
kind of, like,
accurately
credential.
predict that Dean is going to be the drummer for Journey, you're like, good call. But I mean,
Except
so
it's not, it's shitty.
I'm not a fan of the band in general, in the sense that I don't know their history super well. Looking at Courtney Love's history, she obviously had a very rough life. Falling into drugs, being a stripper for years. What I really appreciate about Courtney Love as an artist, listening to this album, I think it was very important to have a female artist at this time come. And, there had been other, very powerful presences of female artists throughout music history. But the fact that, like, she sort of embraced, like, the lower class trashy side of America and like put that forward in the same way that like a Kid Rock was embraced by Americans. Like,
Don't compare these two. Don't do this to me.
So basically, she's just the Kid Rock of grunge.
Oh God.
Except female.
No, I'm gonna think about it as Kid
But
Rock.
I think it is an important
Flashing people.
artistic statement and is a valid voice to be heard, because that voice is ultimately underrepresented in the American zeitgeist.
There's
And-
just so much shade being thrown here by
Yeah.
Greg. It's like Courtney Love, she's like the white, trashy Kid Rock
She was really
of grunge music. She's just an awful
she was
garbage
such a-
fire of a person, and that's so important.
such a role model to all the trailer trash out there.
If you were just like a shitty poor kid living in bumfuck Kansas, you finally had someone to look up to.
And go, hey, I can shoot
I
heroin in
too-
the bathroom and then go on stage.
I could
and-
be a stripper who does heroin too, maybe.
Jeez.
So
Shoot for the stars.
what's funny is that in my mind, this was the most positive I could be towards this.
But think about it. Dude, what's so impressive about her is, and I'm sure most of it is going to be attributed to her looks, but the fact that she came from nowhere and then she started this successful band and then she went on to be a movie star. You know, she did The People vs. Larry Flint and then the huge starring role opposite Jim Carrey and Man on the Moon. And I'm wondering if that's where you knew her from initially, if you're like the age range where, because that movie came out like 99.
I
that you were
never
like,
saw the
oh.
movie.
I didn't realize she was in films.
Basically, my knowledge of
kidding
Courtney
me.
Love was
Yeah, I saw
Like-
Man on the Moon, but I didn't
She
see People versus Larry Flint for whatever reason, that movie about a pornographer that came out when I was a teenager.
my
Weirdo.
knowledge of Courtney Love is whatever, like, you know, entertainment stories about her just being like a trashed mess is what I knew of Courtney Love before this, and the Shreds video. And by the Shreds video, I mean just the sound guy uploading just her isolated vocals and guitar. So,
Well, let me
but I
let me
want
tell
to say
you.
she really impressed me as a musician and as an artist on this album. So,
Well, let me tell
taking
you-
away all the
tell you
personality
this,
stuff,
then.
this is a good CD.
So it's around this time frame when and you can look at the cover and just see how she looked. Like she started cleaning up her image and she became like glam, and she was doing these movies and she was on the
All
red
right, we
carpet
need to
and she
do a
was
glam
like this.
episode because you still don't know what that is.
Well, oh my god,
Glamorous is a
Gla-
thing.
yes.
yeah, I know. I'm being facetious.
gee, not everything's about wearing
Courtney Love is a
eyeliner
glam
and having
artist.
big hair.
She's the Kid Rock of
Oh
glam.
my god,
No, Kid Rock is the Kid Rock of glam.
That's-
I'm gonna say
true.
Kid
you
Rock.
don't, you
is-
don't wear that many fur coats and don't get to call yourself glam.
No, Kid Rock is the most glam guy that wears a wife beater that I know.
All right.
That's probably fair.
Okay. Are we starting the episode now?
Yeah, we're starting the episode. So this is about the great Kid Rock album.
the Kid Rock album. I had his first album. What was the name of it? Maybe it wasn't his first
It
one.
was like
his
Rebel
first-
with
It was the one that came out in it was 99, I think.
and I should know this because my buddy played guitar in that album.
Oh, that's impressive.
I
That's
should
cool.
actually know that.
It was the one with the ball bullshit.
Was American Badass his first album or like his second
That was
album?
like a
No,
second.
yeah.
I really
You're
should know
so
this.
far behind.
You know what? Kenny's not going to listen to this episode.
I've never
either.
listened to a Kid Rock album all the way through.
I had this one, and I remember getting it for Christmas one year. The same year I got Eminem's first record, and then I
The
realized
Marshall Mathers LP.
Yeah, and I realized I don't like either of these, especially the Kid Rock one.
Yeah, so Kid Rock, great artist. That's our episode. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Steve, where can people find you on the internet?
Hole.com. Just-
Do they actually have Hole.com?
I'm sure there's a hole.com.
I'm
yes.
sure there's a hole.com, what
I'm
it
sure there's
shows.
lots of holes.
Probably just a bunch of Shia LaBeouf fanfic.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
But I feel like you were saying something before I derailed you.
Probably. I say a lot of things that don't matter. But you want to talk about songs in particular?
Yeah, let's get into this ranking. For first-time listeners of the program,
Taskmaster Steve.
the way that this works, each of us votes on the songs on the list from best to least best. The best song on a 12-song album gets 12 points. Least best song gets 1 point. We decided not to talk about best Sunday dress because Steve Edwards didn't want to talk about it, but I actually think that's better than half the songs on here. So just tossing that out quick. But voted by the panel as the least best song on Celebrity Skin by Hole, we have Use Once and Destroy. So, Steve Smith, your top song was
Yep,
ranked at
yep.
the bottom.
Really?
Um,
I put that as my very
Yeah,
last
both
one.
of you did. I thought it had a good bridge. I liked the industrial vibe of it. I don't know, like, yeah. So, my roommates got a woman over who we were going to have a female guest originally, but then that all fell through. So I was like talking to this person, like, you want to be a guest on this? And she's an industrial artist, but she decided she didn't want to be on the episode. And that's how I saved Christmas.
That was
I was
a
like,
great
what does
story.
that have to do with
They-
anything?
There was a person we were going to have on the show, and they decided they didn't feel like doing it.
Right.
That's my thoughts on this song.
Look, I like industrial music, is what I was trying to say in a roundabout way.
You
So
could have
yeah,
just said, I like industrial music.
yeah. well, I mean, yeah, that's fair.
This song fits the least with the rest on the record.
It's true. It doesn't really match the rest of the record, which is probably why I ranked it number 1. Because I don't know. I like druggy lo-fi hole. Like when it is a little bit grungy and when it's a little bit slurry. Like they'll live through this songs to a large extent.
So like doll parts and all that.
Yeah, doll parts, Jennifer's Body and Violet, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
When we were in Blue Matches, we played that show with One Beggar Son the one time. Who that was like their whole shtick. It's just like she just sounded like their vocalist sounded like she was on drugs the entire time. I was like, this is amazing.
How is this going to go into an insulting mode? Because I felt like this is going insulting.
No, but
okay.
I think that's a really good sound, and like not every vocalist can capture that effect. And for the most part, they didn't do that on this album.
No.
So the one song that really stood out to me as if they're going to depart from their style, the one song that stuck out as particularly cool is the one that was kind of industrial.
Yeah, this is honestly, it's one of the least hooky songs on the album.
Yeah, it's just,
And so I don't have the background with the band that you guys do, or even the background with the genre that you guys do. I'm, sort of coming into this blind and just, ranking it song by song. And my only knowledge of Courtney Love is like, oh yeah, she's that drunk woman on TRL. So judging this independently, all right, yeah, it's the
that was
least
Carson
interesting
Daly.
song. Carson Daly was the drunk blonde woman on TRL.
Yep. So that was the problem. She sobered up. She should have stayed drunk.
oh, I'm sure she was drunk.
That's probably true.
Yeah, so I honestly don't have too much to say about the song just because the hooks were so not memorable. I don't even really remember what it sounds like other than vaguely industrial.
Yeah, it's just kind of forgettable. I like basically every song on this album, but yeah, least favorite.
I would say there's nothing aggressively bad on this album. Like there's
No.
no Tales of a Scorched Earth on this album.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, there or Where Boys Fear to Tread. None of that
The
bullshit
worst.
on this album.
I'm Greg, and I'm going to reference songs I don't like for every episode.
Hey,
Yeah,
Greg, you sound weird, dude.
It's establishing a canon of our listeners so they can like, oh yeah, those in jokes, and then they feel like included in the group.
Until this is the first one that they've listened to,
Right.
and then they are immediately like, I'm not listening to this. It's
Yeah,
all-
well, clearly I can't trust his opinion on
Referencing.
Melancholy because he doesn't like Where Boys Fear to Tread.
Right?
Or you can listen to the Melancholy episode and be like, how can someone have that opinion?
Listen to the 3 hours of Melancholy and be angry at Greg.
Yeah, there you go. But, yeah, Use Once and Destroy, better than all of Gish. Next up on the list, we have...
I don't have the drops, but I do have actual metal
Oh, yeah.
chairs
Where's
over here, Greg.
Where are your drops at?
They're on that computer that's across the room that I
Oh
didn't
my
want to get out.
gosh.
Steve is feeling extra lazy. You know what, Steve? Just do all the drops with your mouth.
There's a chair from the top rope!
Yeah, I actually don't do that anymore.
All right, so next up on the list, we have Dying. So Steve Smith, you voted this as your last place song.
Yeah,
That's
because the start of the
crazy.
song is her just licking the microphone for 60 seconds, and it's gross and
Who wouldn't
upsetting.
want to hear that?
Look, I'm gonna...
I don't watch ASMR videos. I don't like listening to vocalists lick the microphone.
Oh, it depends on the vocalist.
I actually was pleasantly surprised with this track. I was not anticipating I would like Courtney Love being really sincere, but I felt like sincere emotion from the track. It felt authentic and genuine, and just the emotive power of the piece is really what carried this one for me.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites, and that's because of how emotion filled it is. And
If they just dropped that first part, I would have ranked it way higher. But
I think the first part was, I get what they were doing because it's like, oh, it's the 90s and we're so edgy and we need to whisper because that's so cool.
which is fine. Just cut out of the stuff.
I mean, I get it.
That was for you, ASMR fans.
It's for me, it's so stereotypical edgy 90s. And I think that's kind of a problem I have with some of this album is like, it's so like, oh, we have to be edgy rather than just, oh, let's just make this good. But even with like my preconceived biases, I can't rag on this track. I think it's a good song. I think it's well done. And I think that intro is appropriate for this piece because it fits in with the era. It fits in well with what the album's trying to do and what the song is trying to accomplish, because that soft, quiet intro, including the lip smacks, is sort of meant to be like almost a little bit sensual, because it was a, sensual relationship she had with her husband, very intimate, very close. And so it's meant to be a very intimate piece. And I think ultimately succeeds at that.
For sure.
And this is coming from someone who, you heard what I said about Courtney Love earlier. Like, this is good, Steve. I'm sorry. This is good.
You were like, look, I feel like I got herpes in my ears from the first part of this song, but it was worth it.
Totally worth it.
Yeah, pretty much.
And the chorus is just very haunting. It just, it gets to me. So you're wrong.
Yeah. Coming from a guy who doesn't like Nirvana, who has the preconceived biases against the genre and against this particular artist.
You're just like, if you need to polish off most of the burrs, but leave the ones that are just unpleasant.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, I think if this just was like, the distortion was way heavier and, Billy Corgan was doing the lip smacks, maybe this would be better for you.
Yeah. Just really nasal lip smacks.
Dude, I'd say I would listen to that.
Yeah, that actually does sound pretty good. I mean, how much of Let Me Get This Off My Chest have you listened to, Greg?
The Paul Stanley thing?
Yeah.
I must say, I don't know what you're talking about.
I listened to it straight through once years ago.
I'm sure there's all kinds of smacking.
You will listen to extensive stupid garbage.
I mean, it's hilarious. Like that, I'm listening to that for the comedy. I'm not listening to that because I think, oh, this is sincerely clever stage banter. Like, Steve, that was uploaded as a joke.
Yeah, that's true.
So Paul Stanley does stand-up? Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's somebody edited, what was it, like 3 hours worth of Paul Stanley stage banter?
And they just, like, isolated just the funniest, most ridiculous bits. And, yeah, it was entertaining. It was a fun experience, but I don't listen to it all the time. I listened to Pasticcio Medley once all the way through.
A fun experience in the same way that listening to, Billy Corgan smack his lips into a microphone for 60 seconds at the start of a song would be a fun experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing with, let me just correct you, she's not just smacking her lips, she's actually saying words. I can't remember the exact lines.
She is whispering some.
It's two lines.
I know.
Okay, well,
did you think I missed that part?
Yeah, I did. I thought
I only heard the lip smacks and didn't notice that she was also singing.
Yeah, I thought that's what happened. Yeah. So there you go.
It's not.
Well, Steve has really powerful cognitive dissonance. So
Yeah,
he can block out things that are
I can isolate the good parts of
the
the song and only hear the parts I hate.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's why he's great for this podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, any other thoughts on Dying? Other than it's going to happen to all of us.
That I don't believe that completely, but we'll see. Because Courtney Love is still around, and if you thought
so
somebody
is Keith
was
Richards.
well,
right?
And if you thought there was two people that aren't going to make it for long, those would be two of my top listers, and they're still here.
So I feel like the trick with Keith Richards is right when you think everything's fine. Like, yeah, he's not going to die. Is right when he dies.
Yeah, he's gonna get like really healthy. Everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, he's been sober for
he looks really
years
good
now. He looks great. He's really turning around."
Oh yeah, sobriety will be what kills him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just the shock of not having enough alcohol in his system.
Immediately dead. And Courtney Love she's still fucked up too, because she just I watched a video of her a couple weeks ago where the Smashing Pumpkins tour that we all saw. There, I don't remember which city it was, but she got up on stage and did a couple songs with the band, and she was jacked. She was so out of it. She sounded terrible, but it was still cool though. This is not my PSA for don't do drugs. This is not working. This is not working out very well. So apparently, doing drugs will get you to be rich, famous. You'll be a movie star. You can make music,
Right.
But the thing is, with Courtney Love, is most people hate her. Let's be honest. And if you ever look at any internet comments on anything she's involved with, it's pretty much
so
just
she's like the Gene Simmons of the 90s.
I don't think people hate Gene Simmons as much as they hate Courtney Love. I really don't think so.
I actually think you're wrong about this.
I think the people who know Gene Simmons hate him more than the people who know Courtney Love.
And I would say, actually, overall, probably Gene Simmons is more famous than Courtney Love. If you look
Oh,
at,
absolutely.
in
Yeah.
terms of like overall rock history. And I would say, in terms of hated rock stars, like those two and Ted Nugent,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
like, man, what a trilogy. I'd love to see the three of them on a bill together. That'd be tremendous.
No, I don't put her in
And then
with
Ted Nugent
Nugent.
would yell at Courtney Love for doing drugs.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I'd go to that show.
No, I'm not going to anything with Ted Nugent.
They
on.
need a drummer.
Ted Nugent is great live.
Who's
Like-
who's the worst drummer in terms of everybody hates them?
Peter Criss.
Mm.
No, I think Tommy Lee. Maybe.
Yeah, but he's
Yeah.
actually a good drummer. Is the
He's
trick.
good, but people still hate him though.
Yeah, look,
Are you saying that Ted Nugent isn't a good guitarist? We're not discussing a supergroup made out of incompetent people. We're discussing a supergroup made out of people that everyone hates.
Yeah, Tommy Lee would be a good choice because he would try to like mix in hip hop with that.
Ooh. All right, you guys heard it here first. We need to put together a supergroup of Gene Simmons, Tommy Lee, Ted Nugent, and Courtney Love.
Yeah, Whew.
God,
Courtney
dang.
Love holding down that rhythm guitar.
She can't though. Is the problem. and as far as competent musicians go,
I mean, but here's the
as
trick:
much
is-
as I like her music, she can't play anymore at all.
and ironically, that band we set up would actually be pretty good musically, with Courtney Love being the weak link because Gene is a good bassist that is able to sing pretty well in his late 60s. Ted Nugent's a great player. Tommy Lee is a great player. So really, it's like, oh yeah, those three guys are very competent, established musicians.
Yeah.
And Courtney Love.
Honestly, if you just told Gene Simmons, hey, this is an entirely a mercenary gig and you're getting paid a number with this many zeros after it, he would show up and deliver.
Yeah, and also the fact that him and Ted Nugent are both clean and sober, so like they're just going to get the job done. That's a really boring band. We kind of dropped
The thing is,
Although, I don't know, Ted Nugent would probably try to have sex with some teenagers while he was there. And
oh yeah, and he's gonna.
I mean, so with
shoot-
Gene Simmons.
He's gonna shoot. He's gonna shoot every animal nearby. He can't resist it.
yeah, we need Ted Nugent to tour with Morrissey. That's what needs to
Oh
happen.
god. Can we take Courtney Love out of this band because I don't want to associate her with these people? And can we just put Kid Rock, the earlier mentioned, in her place? That way,
Actually-
it could be a band of just people I just can't stand.
Morrissey's probably the best vocalist for this band because a lot of people really don't like him. And yeah, him working with the Nuge would be great.
I'd be
also
down with that.
Morrissey, it's like a 60 to 70% chance he's not even going to show up for a show.
Right, he's just going
And
to cancel.
and then Gene Simmons is going to be so pissed because he's not going to make any money from that show, and so it's going to be
Yeah, there we
great.
go.
Yeah.
Right, but also you have a band full of people who are also vocalists. So if someone doesn't show up, they'll just carry the slack.
No, you can't make up for Morrissey. Can't.
I
So
mean,
you
I
guys
feel
ready
like
to move on to
Courtney
the-
Love is probably the closest we have to a Morrissey who's willing to just like mumble atonally into a microphone.
Dude, she will kill it on that. Dude.
Well, that was a lot of conversation about the song "Dying." You guys ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, songs. Okay.
All right. So next up on the list we have "Petals,"
Really?
closing track on the album. I like this one a lot. What really stood out to me was the bass playing. Like, man, the bass is really good on this track. And then I looked it up and like, oh, it's not Melissa Aufnemar. That's why the bass playing is so good.
Oh, poor Melissa. She's awesome though.
No,
but she's not great.
no,
I mean, she's a
she's
better
fine.
vocalist than a bass player, I would say.
She's fine. But then I saw, oh, it's Billy Corgan playing bass. That's why this is better.
Womp womp.
And the thing is, I didn't do that just because I knew Billy Corgan was playing bass. I was just enjoying the track. Like, man, the bass is really good on this track. It's like way better than the rest of the album. Looked on Wikipedia, like, oh, Billy Corgan bass on this track. Oh, all right.
So the revelation I had while listening to this album is probably the reason that Melissa Aufnemar wasn't asked back to the Smashing Pumpkins reunion tour. A lot of people are saying, like, look, if you're not going to have Darcy back, at least have Melissa back.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the reason she didn't come back is I don't think she would be as willing to be bossed around as Billy Corgan wanted.
Oh, for sure.
Because, like, she showed up, towards the end of recording Machina.
Yeah, she joined in like 2000.
Yeah, so, like, they were almost done recording Machina. So, obviously, you know, if she showed up and was like, hey, I want to write a song, they could just tell her, no, we've already written all the songs. We're barely finishing recording. You're mostly here to tour. But if they'd brought her back on, be like, all right, we're working on a new album, I don't think she would have been willing to be bossed around after, like, having co-written with Corgan on all these songs. She'd be like, no, I'm helping co-write these songs. I'm not just hired gun bassist.
Yeah, and I get that. You know, there's a certain amount of knowing your place when you join a band and knowing, like, how far to push the hand that feeds you, which I think we've all made mistakes, as we've grown up and played in different bands and pushed different people creatively when maybe we shouldn't have. But just talking about this track in isolation, man, I understand why Billy will often just force his bandmates out to play the instruments himself because he sounds really good.
My take on this song in particular is that it is very representative of a closing track for this era,
Yeah.
and not that memorable of one. It was fine. This is a decent way to close out the album, but there are better examples of this.
Yeah, it's not like an emotional climactic high point. It's very in touch with the rest of the album as far as production and tone and mood goes. That's why usually a closing track for me will be very top of the list because it's kind of that peak.
Right.
But this one's a
big
solid.
epic closer.
Yeah, this one's a solid song, but it doesn't feel like when you listen to it, like you get like really moved by the last song. You're like, oh, it's great. I'll listen to that all again. You're kind of just like, oh, if I want to play it again, I'll play it again because I want to hear the first half of the album, which in my opinion is much better than the last half.
This song should have been the side A closer, and they should have just had a much better side B closer.
I would probably say that even though it's one of my least favorite songs, that Northern Star would be a better closer, in my opinion. Or Dying.
Well, speaking of Northern Star, that's next on the list, and I voted that as my number 3 song on the album, so I rated it super high. You guys hated this one.
This is the song that...
Why do you guys hate good music?
Because it's just not for me.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I thought this had a good build, but by the time I got to this point in the album, like sort of flipping back and forth between like the lyric sheets and things, I sort of started to reach the point where like, well, no, I'm going to save that comment for a different song. Actually, no, belay that. Edit it out. Edit her out.
Well, the downfall of this song and the downfall of several of the really good tracks on here is that the track time is just too much. It goes on too long.
I thought the build was probably the best part of this song.
Well, that's because you're wrong.
Yeah, so my take on this song is that in terms of the composition of the piece, felt like a very late 60s psychedelic ballad. So the kind of stuff you would have heard on a Jefferson Airplane record of the era. And so when it sounds like old people music, I get really excited. Like, oh, this sounds like the stuff I listen to. This is awesome.
Old people music, I love it.
I love the old people music. But what's really, and especially like the phrasing that...
The funny thing is that now that this record is old people music because...
Oh, yeah.
Right?
No, it absolutely
Because it's 20 years old.
That classic rocks album, Celebrity Skin.
But what I'm saying, it reminds me of, like in terms of the vocal phrasing, like the melodies that Courtney's using is very reminiscent of like Grace Slick of the era. And I think that's super cool, along with like the sort of descending guitar line. So I think it's very cool in terms of just the vocal melody and the guitar playing. But the like second half where she just like belts out the vocals, there's just a lot of punch, power to it, and I think it sounds really cool. And so that emotional resonance really works well with the song, and that is in terms of like the way the vocals are delivered, more of a 90s trend than anything that would have been done in one of those old ballads from the 60s. And so I thought that was a really great touch and made for a really excellent listen. I enjoyed this one quite a bit.
Well, I want to jump on that vocal comment because you know how when you listen to something as a child, when you think about it now, you have this like emotional response to it. It kind of takes you back to that time frame. This is the one song of the record that I remember the most because I was like 13 when it came out. I remember listening to it and liking the record, but this was the one song that every time I would be like, oh my God. Even though I was like obsessed with Courtney, I was like, her voice just sounds like absolute, just like scraping nails. Like it would just drive me crazy. And every time that I would think about this record, I would go years about listen to it. I'd be like, oh yeah, that fucking song, that song with the just the it just like makes
it's rough around the edges.
Me like pull. And well, that's the problem with it though, because her style, we were talking about their album previous to this that came out, is very much more in the grunge genre, and it's a lot more rough. This is so polished, this record, that when you get to this song and it's like it just sounds so
Out of
like
place.
yeah, it sounds out of place. It's verging on just like being extremely pitchy, and it doesn't flow well. It interrupts that solid listening experience, and so that makes it more unique. It makes it stand out, but not necessarily in the way that you're looking for.
Well, see, I don't think she's pitchy enough where I would say it's bad. And the thing is, what I generally interpreted whole was not having listened to the previous records, but just listened to this one, Isolation, was sort of a faux punk band where they pretended really hard to be an edgy punk band, but the entire time were actually a well-produced pop band.
That's what this is, yeah.
And so basically,
I mean,
consider
of
this
all of the sort of riot girl bands named after vaginas, they're probably the tamest.
And so basically what I consider this to be about as punk as an Avril Lavigne record. And so I wasn't taking...
Wait, is Avril Lavigne named after a vagina?
No, but you get what I'm saying, where like people are like, Avril's so punk, and she's not. It's a pop record.
Well,
And so what
they're
I'm saying
more
is
punk though because they were shooting heroin in.
But what I'm saying is
That's-
the
Avril Lavigne was on heroin?
Yeah, she was.
the little bits of punk affectations heard throughout the record, I just took as being a very calculated pop direction to give them like a little bit of punk credentiality. And so I was fine. I kind of expected something like this on the record. And so when it came up, it didn't surprise me, but it was just an enjoyable part of the build of the piece. I enjoyed it, but also considered it to be completely calculated.
Well, about that punk thing. So there's a lot of books I've read where Courtney Love shows up as a character, and NoFX's autobiography, Hepatitis B Bathtub, or whatever it's called. I read that.
Hepatitis B is for bathtub?
There's something about Hepatitis B in the. I don't know. I can't remember the name. I read it about a year and a half ago.
Hepatitis B!
And the most interesting part of the book is Smelly, the drummer, and his just crazy life and dealing with drug addiction. And him and Courtney hooked up for a little bit. And there was this one part in the book where he said that this is before she started Hole. She asked him to be a drummer in a band. He was like, "Hell no, she sucks. I'm not going to be in a band with her." And so he didn't. So she was in that circle of all the punk people. And then I last year I also read the Scott Weiland autobiography, and he talked about having several run-ins with her, and they were all in this kind of, these grunge people and these punk people were all in kind of the same shared universe. So I think it was there. She wanted to do
like
the punk thing. It's
the
just
one heroin dealer who like probably
they all
knows
knew, yes,
everybody.
probably.
I want to read his autobiography.
And just yeah. So I think that the idea was there. She started out trying to do like punkish stuff. It's just that then they started getting popular, and it became a thing. Like, what can we do to
I'm being largely
polish
facetious
this?
with my opinion of them being sellouts, not real punks. Like, I don't care about that. I don't mind pop groups.
They were grunge, and then they became pop for this record because I think that's just what sold. And like I said, that was when Courtney hit a really glamorous time frame. Then the next year is when she started really becoming a huge movie star. So look that up. Anyway, I'm done with my rant. Next.
All right, next up on the list, we have Boys on the Radio.
That I like this one a lot.
Yeah,
That's a really catchy melody. I'm a little surprised that it's this low.
The thing with this record is that ranking these songs is kind of like the ranking of Dookie. They're all pretty much the same quality, so it's not any like you could take. I put this lower on my list, but it could go number 5 spot. It wouldn't really make that big of a difference. They're all so similar, with the exception of just a couple toward the middle. I mean, they're all really solid songs, and they're all like 8s as far as songwriting goes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything too bad to say about this one. Like, yeah, it's a catchy little song.
Let me look
I
and
think
see.
maybe it's not as maybe
Corgan-
not as distinct.
Ooh, Corgan didn't write on this one. This is one of the few ones he didn't write on. Or at least that he's
Yeah,
not
so
giving
maybe like
credit.
the hooks aren't as strong, but it's still fine. Just like middle of the road power pop.
You know what's interesting looking at the CD booklet is, so it lays it out and it shows who all the songwriting's by, and it says, music and then lyrics, and all the music's, almost all the songs are multiple people, and every single song lyrics is just Courtney.
Yep.
So why doesn't it at the end of it just say
All lyrics by Courtney Love?
instead of just breaking it down for every song? Like
Ego?
That? I guess it's a strange way to do that. When you
look, I mean, I'll give that album credit. At least you can read the liner notes, unlike most Smashing Pumpkins albums we've done up to this point, which has been absolute bullshit.
Yeah,
I'm doing a quick inventory in my head. Okay, there's no liner notes to speak of for Gish. The liner notes for Siamese Dream, they're pretty illegible. The liner notes for Melancholy are totally legible.
Actually,
it's just neatly printed booklet.
I think
for Adore, they're totally legible.
Yeah, Adore is legible. I'll say the bullshit thing with Adore, though, is how there's not a track list on the back of the CD. It's just like, hey, here's just a blurry image. Like, you could have totally put a track list on top of this blurry image.
it's because it's all masterpiece.
Right, yeah, I get it. So yeah, any comments on Boys on the Radio?
No, I mean,
I think
it's fine.
This is probably one of the catchiest songs on the album, I thought, in terms of just like really good hooky melody.
All right. Well, as we're getting crickets, I'll just move on to the next one. Next up on the list, we have "Hit So Hard."
Yeah, I really like this one too, just because of it's that interesting juxtaposition of like really messed up lyrical content with happy, just like positive sounding chord progression and a major key, and it just sounds it sounds soothing, but it's lyrically it's awful. It's just terrible.
So I went on Genius and looked up the meaning of this one, and they were giving it so much credit. They were like, this song is really about how great the sex is, but it's just hints like, no, it's about domestic violence.
Yeah.
Maybe there might be hints that there's a sexual undertone to that, but he's punching her.
I would never even gotten the sexual context out of that. Because Courtney Love, her she's usually pretty blatant with her lyrical content, because her solo album that came out in the mid 2000s, I guess it was, maybe like 2003 or something like that. She has a song on there basically where she's like, I want to get screwed by guys. She's like, give me a big black guy, give me a white guy. And she's basically, she's not holding back when it comes to that. She's not using metaphors, and
so she is the Gene Simmons of grunge.
I mean, screw is a metaphor.
I guess it is.
Literally
metaphorically.
It's
like literally. But that's the reason why I like this song. I mean, it's got a nice hook too, but it's really the lyrical content for this one that makes it stand out for me.
Yeah, I'd say lyrical content is it's a well-written song, good pop melodies. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the standout tracks on the album. Maybe it's from my years of domestic abuse that I've experienced, and maybe it's because it's a catchy pop hook, but it's definitely one of the standout tracks, so that's why it ranks higher for me, because I remembered it more than the others.
You're like, I identify with this song.
Yeah.
Unless the second verse, he's so cold, give him a candy coat, he can't swim, but he can float. One by one, they all fall down, look at him, and drown. Unless that is a completely sexual reference, and that's like she's talking about drowning, and she is. Anyway,
yeah, I'm gonna move on.
Okay,
next thing.
All right, so next up on the list, the best Yngwie Malmsteen song on the album, "Heaven Tonight." So, "Heaven Tonight," classic Yngwie Malmsteen single. Any song that utilizes the line "Sweet Surrender" in the lyrics is a classic. Great video. I think he lifts the guitar during the video, throws it in the air.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
He's talking about a Yngwie Malmsteen song that has the same name as this one.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, God.
One of his catchier pop singles. Big hit for him, became an MTV staple. So if that Yngwie song was on this album, it would have been the number one song on the album. But sadly, it was just a different song with "Heaven Tonight," so thus "Heaven Tonight" did not win this ranking. This one's pretty catchy. It's all right, power pop. Not as good as the Yngwie song, but yeah, pretty solid.
This is the one that's about her daughter, right?
Yeah.
So my take on this one
I like how this song, she sounds kind of drunk. Yeah, she does a little bit.
So this one, the common interpretation is that this is about Francis Bean Cobain. who had been born a little bit before this. Now, this raised the question of who has had more songs written about them between Courtney Love and Frances Bean Cobain. Because if you ask Courtney Love, she'll say like every Nirvana song and half of the Smashing Pumpkins songs,
yeah.
but it's probably just half of the Nirvana songs. But then she wrote this song about her daughter. What's his name? Machine Gun Kelly has that song about her, and the Emotron has a couple of songs. There might be an actual runoff between the two.
Then that will be the next podcast. We'll actually have to calculate that.
Songs
Figure it
about
out.
Frances Bean Cobain and which ones are creepy.
And Courtney Love.
I just think it's interesting that this song has one of the best guitar play. Has some of the best guitar playing on the
Yes.
album, which is probably because they listened to the Yngwie song and like, man, we got to compete. I mean, his sick, Mixolydian scales on Heaven Tonight are, some of the best guitar playing ever recorded. We've got to compete with that.
The
We're gonna
horse
have
is
the same
dead,
song.
Greg. Greg, leave the poor horse
Yeah,
alone.
All right. I think you're being real.
Behold the nightmare.
Leave that one alone too. Leave Knife Horse alone.
Because Erlandson, he's a very good guitarist, and I'm probably like 90% sure that he played 100% of guitar parts in this record.
So you're saying Courtney Love didn't play the rhythm parts?
I'm pretty positive.
Is there I forget, does the band have a second credited guitarist most of the time?
Eric Erlandson. Yeah, he's in the band.
Oh right, yeah.
The band's 4 people. He's the only guy in the band.
Right, I keep forgetting
Yeah.
about that.
No, he's
Because
like,
he doesn't make it into promotional photos or things, does he?
he's on the cover, but
You got a visitor.
he's on the cover, but no, people when they're showing off the band, it's never like, look at Eric. It's like you got
Look, here's the ringer who's like really musically sound in the band.
you got 3 ladies,
Oh, yeah, there he is
attractive
over there in the
ladies,
corner.
and 2 of
There
them
he
are
is
very
over-
attractive, and you're not
Unlit
gonna
in
be
the
like,
corner.
you're not gonna be like, hey, check out this dude. He's got long hair too. He's cool. But he's an awesome guitarist, and if you look at the credits here, he at least co-wrote the music to every one of these songs. The ones that are mostly guitar driven, like the ones that are almost only guitar, like those are all just him. And yeah, you can listen to the album and you can hear some, even if they're not super intricate parts, like any of the ones that got like little guitar licks and they're just guitar. Like, there's no way Courtney Love's playing that. You've seen live video of her. She plays chords, and and then there's that famous of the actual audio where she's not even playing most of the time. When she is, it's just like.
I do like that the diehard Courtney Love fan on this panel can't even defend her as a good musician.
No, she is the thing. Here's the thing, though. She probably is. I've seen other videos of her playing live, and she was fine. If she's not jacked up on something, she's probably just fine. But that's most of her life. So it's the same way with singing. I mean, this is before autotune was really a thing. So she's singing these parts and doing a good job. But if you watch most of the video of her live, she either doesn't care, or she's on something, and she sounds terrible.
Doesn't care, or is on drugs, or both.
Yeah.
On drugs that make her not care.
Or she doesn't care that she's on drugs. There's some combination of not caring and drugs.
Some combination of apathy and drugs.
Which,
Apathy
Make
and
for
drugs
a-
would be a pretty good grunge album, actually.
okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's
You gonna write it?
No, it's not the 90s anymore.
Oh, shit. I keep forgetting.
I mean, if you did a Spinal Tap style parody of grunge, did a film, that could be a name of an album.
The sad thing is, it's probably been long enough now that you could do that and it'd
I
be
feel like it-
popular.
When you say it's been long enough, I mean, it might have been too long, because the thing is, Spinal
Yeah.
Tap made fun of hair metal like a few years before hair metal became big.
Yeah, I don't. I'm trying to think of that probably already exists. There's that Canadian TV show Cocked Guns that touches on a lot of the grunge tropes in their parody band.
I don't know.
It's a Spinal Tap, but about like an independent.
Look, nobody's
Canadian band
watching
trying to make-
Canadian shows other than you.
That's
so.
true.
Okay.
I only started watching it because it was in the linked videos of Pure Ownage back when that was a thing.
Okay.
All right, so any other comments
Anyway.
on Heaven Tonight?
None
No,
of
it's
you guys watch
it's
Pure
cool.
Ownage?
It's like this is This is the 90s modern version of a like 50s throwback kind of song, is what I
Yeah.
think.
No, not really. This is basically a like early 70s power pop tune. This is a Badfinger song.
You don't think that the melody that is that whole typical
Oh my god, just
going-
listen to a Badfinger CD, then you'll
I
understand.
don't know. I've never listened to Badfinger.
When you listen to like, 3 of their songs, like, oh yeah, that this is just what this is.
And listen to it and be like, man, this is just a whole album.
This is just
Yeah.
a whole album, but like with
A
less
whole
good
album.
production because it was in the 70s.
Are you trying to say that there was no good production in the 70s?
No, but I'm sort of quoting Steve vaguely, where he always complains about the production on retro albums. Like, man, why didn't they just do this way better?
He might be talking about strictly
you know
Kiss
what?
albums,
It's
which,
Right.
mostly Kiss
and that
albums.
would be just like having
You
better
complained
songs,
about
probably.
you complained about Al Green and Black Sabbath, basically any old album. And I'll tell you this: as I've listened to the entire Smashing Pumpkins catalog, if they produced all those old albums like they did Zeitgeist, they'd be way better.
Oh, dude, that's fine word.
See how the statements are different from the other side, Steve? Like, what? How could anyone believe that? That's such a ridiculous statement.
I mean, yeah, if they produced those old albums, so they like
Like
sounded
choirs and choirs of Billy on Siamese.
good.
would've been
Choirs
great.
and choirs of Al Green's. Yeah, that sounds like that would be
That would be
mellifluous
cool,
as
yeah.
hell.
Whoa, yeah, no, that'd be great. Choirs and
Right.
choirs of Al Green.
So, what's the point of contention here, Greg?
Yeah, that's true. You
Al
gotta
The
Green-
point
go
of
in.
Al
contention is
Green
you
would-
disagree with me about the Pumpkins record.
I mean, Zeitgeist isn't a very good record.
I don't think
That's
that.
probably the best Pumpkins record I've heard thus far.
I don't think there's
And by
gonna
thus
be.
far, I mean of all of them, because I've listened to all of them.
You're never gonna find somebody, even like the most hardcore Smashing Pumpkins fan, that tells you that Billy's a better singer than Al Green. So,
Yeah, that's 100% true.
so I don't know where this is going.
All right, so next up on the list,
Are you trying to say that Al Green should have been the Smashing Pumpkins? Is that really what?
that actually would have been really awesome.
He's very angry about being a rat in a cage, but somehow I'm slightly aroused by it.
So next up on the list, we have Playing Your Song.
This is the one I was saving the comment for, in that feel like Courtney Love doing a bunch of songs about how all those vultures in California are just trying to get rich off her husband's legacy, and it's like her most polished and poppy album. And let's be honest, a big part of why she's successful is Kurt Cobain's legacy. It just kind of comes off as disingenuous.
That's true. I'll give you that.
Like,
Yeah,
she should
Yeah.
she should be nicer to the rest of Nirvana. That being said, I did rank this one fourth. I thought it was actually
That being
was-
said, it's all
It
work.
like- as-
in terms of like
it's
being
catchy though.
being a good whole song. This one is one of the few that really has the right amount of grit for what they do, I think.
I agree.
I ranked it third from the bottom because it wasn't as catchy.
That's fair.
Basically,
They were like, they did a grunge song, so Greg's like,
Oh,
"Ugh."
Oh, it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like it wants to be the Beatles.
no, they want to sound like Badfinger, not the Beatles.
She did a grunge song about how much of an asshole Dave
Dave
Grohl
Grohl.
is, and you're like, what? Dave Grohl is a saint, and grunge is terrible.
Right? I mean, yeah, pretty much. Like that, you're hitting everything on the head. Like what? Dave Grohl, like the most likable member of Nirvana?
The reason why he's an asshole to Courtney Love is because he didn't go along with her bullshit.
Yeah.
But that's fine. It's understandable. And we don't know what happened behind the scenes, but yeah, she was trying to take over control of Nirvana copyrights and all kinds of things, and she was trying to use that to her advantage. And the other people who were involved in Nirvana obviously didn't like that because they've never, from what I understand, they never liked Courtney and they didn't want her
No
anywhere
way.
involved in the music. And then all of a sudden she's Kurt's dead and she's profiting off of the music more than ever.
And the sort of the trick to remember with bands, like the perception versus the reality, like there is always the perception of bands being this perfect unit that never breaks up. But if you look at the history of most bands,
They hate each other. Yeah.
they hate each other, and there's like constant rotation of members and a ton of people that have gone in and out. And so when a member dies and the
It's
other
a
band
happy thing.
members can choose to continue on because it's not fair to them that they just can't create art for the rest of their lives because Kurt Cobain decided to kill himself, or
Be
You know,
murder. He
or like
decided to
with
murder.
with Freddie Mercury, like him dying of AIDS, the other members of Queen wanting to continue to produce some form of art,
Mhm.
whether it be how they did it. They would say Queen Plus, and they would announce the name of the singer they'd had because they didn't consider it to be Queen without Freddie, and always tried to make sure they acknowledged that it was different. Like you have to allow the remaining members to continue the legacy of the art they created. Like, it was, yes, Kurt Cobain was the heart and soul of Nirvana, but to say, Dave Grohl, you can't play Nirvana songs, like, part of the reason those songs were so successful was his driving drums
You're right.
and his,
Dave Grohl was way better than the drummer they had on Bleach.
yeah, and also his backing vocals added a really great pop sheen and filled out their sound. And so him wanting to continue a legacy that he was pretty instrumental in making successful is perfectly reasonable. It's, as long as you're doing it in a classy way, which, I mean, Dave Grohl is kind of the epitome of a class act in rock music in general. Let them live their lives. Let them continue to make art.
And Kurt Novoselic, well, he's probably the one that kept them true to their punk roots.
It's Christ. No,
Brist Novoselic. Right. I never remember his first name.
yeah. He just plays bass.
Right.
Nobody likes bass players.
Yeah.
I like him. I mostly like his
you like him so much you remembered his name.
right. I like his post Nirvana work with like No WTO combo and things like that, where he did like a bunch of weird side projects.
He's in a band now where it's like
So-
people are 20 years younger than him.
So do we have any comments on the actual song,
yeah.
other than the idea of bands continuing?
I commented on the actual
it's a good-
song.
it's a good song,
It's
I mean.
like peak hole. As
I like your peak hole.
as much of an oxymoron as that phrase is.
Yeah, no, for me, this is very easily towards the bottom, but also I don't like grunge. So, like, the grunge song? Pfft, right at the bottom.
Oh, that grunge band? They're playing grunge music? What
How
a
dare
weird
they.
Can't believe it. The grunge band needs to go back to playing pop music.
Why aren't they playing blues rock?
Why aren't they playing Gene Simmons covers all day?
Look, I like when the grunge band decides they're a pop band, and then like, oh, pop is better than grunge. I'm having a great time.
All right. What's the next song?
Next up is "Reasons to Be Beautiful," which I ranked 1 point below "Playing Your Song." So I liked this one even less.
Oh, dude, this is
Scroll to
Good
the
song.
middle.
I like this one a lot for the lyrical content as well, because the whole concept of not feeling like you're good enough and being like, I have to do these certain things to impress you. What does it take to not just be physically beautiful, but to look beautiful to this person? It's a good concept, and it comes across strongly.
Coming
the
from
song.
Courtney Love, who built her career on being attractive, and then other people wanted to be in her band.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yep.
But the thing
And
is,
then wrote an entire album about the superficiality of beauty and how fake everybody in California is.
but think about that though, because if what you're usually looked at as being an attractive person and no one wants to take your art seriously, that is it's an issue, and that's going to be something that affects you. Because I don't know that it's necessarily something that bothers Courtney so much, but other people in that position, it's gonna get to them. They feel like they're never gonna be taken seriously.
Yeah, and I mean that was a major sort of thing in this entire genre. Is riot girl punk was specifically a thing because like the way women were treated in the punk scene was so very different that like, as this applies across most music. Is that first of all, female performers are expected to be conventionally attractive, and everything else can follow from that. But it's there's this expectation we have as a society that, well, first she has to be hot, otherwise I'm not even going to listen to her. And then it's the ones who like really work hard at getting good at songwriting, getting good at playing their instruments. They also have to be working hard at being hot the entire time, and
I think
it's
a
easy to
pop
build that sort of
music thing in general.
That
Like,
still is that way today.
but that's in general for even like male artists. Like, there's a bit more wiggle
No.
room to be an
There's
ugly
a
male
lot
artist.
more wiggle room
Yeah.
to be an ugly male
but
artist.
in general, you don't see ugly movie stars because you don't want to watch an ugly person on screen.
Think about 1995. Blues Traveler just hits a couple of huge songs.
Well, the
John,
90s
if John
but here's-
Popper
but
was
here's-
a woman, would he have ever been successful?
But here's the trick with the 90s in general. The 90s was in a large way rebelling against how in the 80s you had to be attractive to be successful. Period. Like those hair metal bands, they were all a bunch of really attractive, ripped dudes in shape.
Yet women still had to be attractive to be successful musicians in the 90s.
Right.
I mean, like
And
the
so-
closest you get is like, I don't know, maybe four non-blondes kind of dressed a little bit dumpy, but it would, you know,
You've got like
you don't have a female John Popper.
yeah, you've got like Wilson Phillips, where Carney Wilson was, but she was like completely ridiculed. Like, oh, the fat one. They're like, well, we're just gonna look at the other couple, and it's terrible.
But
and
I think in general, people want their pop idols to be attractive, male or female.
sure, but it's 10 times.
You know, that's why
more
Meatloaf
critical
is
on
such
women.
an outlier, because there aren't a bunch of 300-pound pop stars. That's why that's so weird and goofy and a gimmick.
But you have a Meatloaf, you have a John Popper, you don't
There is
have any of
a
those.
Meatloaf.
Yeah.
There's a Meatloaf across all of music history who was rejected by like 30 labels, and that's why it's so weird. And like, hey, there's the one fat guy.
Well, that's not even true because there's a Meatloaf, there's a John Popper, there's that one ska band with the super fat vocalist. On the female side of things, you've got maybe Hart a little bit. Even
No.
then, she was fairly
But they
Their
were
guitarist is very
conventionally
attractive,
side. Yeah, she had.
and when they were signed during their heyday, they were both thin and attractive. I think you
Yeah.
could do Patti Smith. Actually, would be a really great example in terms of like not necessarily being conventionally attractive, or even Janis Joplin, who dressed down quite a bit and wasn't necessarily conventionally attractive. So I think,
it got harder definitely the 80s and 90s though. Like,
well, I would say not so much
Video
in the
killed the radio star and whatnot.
mhm, seriously.
For women, still in the 90s, yeah, like
Yeah, women had it tougher in the 90s in terms of like having to still be attractive to be successful.
which, hey, look, that's what Courtney Love was talking about.
right.
So that was kind of our hope. I mean, we're even dealing with that today. Whenever I'm looking at nerd things online, talking about like the upcoming Captain Marvel movie, there's all these dudes going, "Oh, well, Brie Larson's just not smiling enough in the trailers and the photos," and
People are
she's.
actually saying that.
Oh,
I'm not
yep.
even kidding, and they're going. They're like, she's just not hot enough. She's not nearly hot enough to play the part. But whenever like Robert Downey Jr. or anybody gets cast for a thing, there's not all these dudes online going, I don't know if he's hot enough.
Well,
I feel
in
like Robert
fairness-
Downey Jr. is not a great
Yeah, 'cause
example
he is an
he's
attractive
pretty
guy.
hot.
Yeah.
Right. And in fairness, like, the Marvel casting, I mean, the Chris's, like those dudes shirtless, those are some very attractive men.
It's true.
So,
Yes.
like, if you're comparing Brie Larson to Chris Evans, it might be fair to say she's not as hot as Chris Evans, because Chris Evans is a
guy.
fine beefcake. He's like James Eha level.
That should be the rule. If you're a dude on Twitter who's like harassing Brie Larson, you have to first comment, by the way, I'm bi. I think the Chris's are hot. You're not as hot as them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so if that is their argument that like she's not as
that's-
sexy as Thor,
That's not their argument, though.
No, the
But I'm
argument.
saying
Their
that's-
argument
that's-
is women need to smile more.
right?
Yeah.
Which is dumb. But for me, I'd rather just see how her performance is rather than care whether or not she's hot. Like
Exactly. That's what we should. But I'm saying this all harkens back to this idea, and that's how.
But here's
our
the thing:
society
if we
runs.
actually care about how good of an artist Courtney Love is, she's
The argument does break down a little bit.
right. That's what I'm saying. Like, man, I wish people would just take me seriously for my art, my really shitty art that depends on a bunch of people thinking I'm attractive in order to get to play with me, because I'm barely able to function as a guitarist, and as a vocalist, I am okay at
But
best.
But here's the thing, though.
So if she was not hot, would she have been able to get the support of all the people
Oh,
around her?
Of course not.
And so-
Absolutely not.
And so that's like,
Because she can
so-
make good art, but all she has
But
to
the
do
thing
to
is-
make good art is have Billy Corgan write it for her, a really good producer to polish her up, and somebody to prop her up
And
to
so-
sing when she's.
so
Somebody
I,
to, like,
I guess
dolly
that's,
her
that's where
out.
it breaks down a little bit for me. Where if she was like a really talented player or really talented songwriter on her own, and then wrote this song, then I'd have a little bit more respect for the message. But
I
like,
think there's something to be said of like self-awareness of your own hypocrisy, though, right? Because like she could look at her career path and be like, "Look, I only got this because I was, a ruthless business person and very good looking. There are a lot more way talented women that I was in, that I saw in clubs in LA, like hustling way harder than I did and getting nowhere because they didn't look good.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I just wish the song was catchier, I guess.
Okay.
That
Anyway.
that would have been a great song. I would like to see Courtney Love do just like a list of better bands than her.
That would so every band.
Oh my
But
gosh.
like, better bands than her that were, women who weren't as attractive and didn't make it.
Courtney's somebody that has talent. She has to have other people to bring it out of her, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I get that. I think I would not say that she is untalented. I think she is very limited in terms of technical ability, but she is good at gathering the components around her to make something that sounds very good. She knows how to create good art. She recognizes her limitations and recognizes where she needs help. But the art that she creates would not be able to be created if she was not the core driving force, driving direction of it. So I would say she is actually very talented, and I was just being facetious for the lulz.
I completely backtrack everything I just said. Let me go ahead and edit out the last 10 minutes.
Nah, leave it in.
All right.
No, I just was just having fun playing devil's advocate. So yeah, any other comments on Reasons to Be Beautiful before we move on?
Nope. That was my number 2 song.
I liked the bridge. It was the drop there was good. But yeah, otherwise.
We don't have any drops this episode, Steve.
But
Oh, you got to drop it. Let's go.
All right, so coming in as the number 3 song on the album, I voted this as my number 1, Awful, next on the list.
The problem was I didn't have the actual CD, so I had to listen to this on YouTube, and the version they have on YouTube is the music video version.
You can find it with just the music, without the music video.
Now, I flipped around a bit, but wasn't able to. But yeah, that version of it just... they did this obnoxious thing where they had crowd cheering noise floor throughout the entire thing that just made the recording kind of messy and not as clear as it should have been. So I put it in the middle for that. It was a good song otherwise.
It's a great song.
Yeah, this one completely threw me off when I first listened to it because I was expecting kind of a shitty grunge album, and then all of a sudden I got really catchy power pop with track 2. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's why this is one of the
This is a
singles.
power pop band? This is like Super Drag and Fountains of Wayne and Badfinger? Why didn't anyone tell me this sooner? I was taken aback and I did not expect it at all.
Now I'm just picturing Hole covering Stacy's mom.
Yeah, it'd be great. But so here's the thing. As far as power pop, I don't automatically love a band just because it's power pop, just because they fit into that genre convention. The example I would pull up is a band called Enough's Enough, where they're a hair metal power pop band from the 80s, and they're like a super trendy band to like, where a lot of like really talented musicians I know are super into Enough's Enough. And they never clicked with me. I don't get the songs, like it just doesn't resonate with me. And so this is like a step above Enough's Enough, but still not as good as the other power pop bands I mentioned, where it's still good power pop, but if I'm ranking power pop bands that I enjoy, this comes towards the bottom, but that's not to say there's anything necessarily bad about it. It's just there's other stuff in the same genre I enjoy much more, but enjoying the genre, this was great.
Leaving?
I mean, I don't have anything really else to add to this. It's just, and this is the reason why this song is one of the singles. It's radio friendly pop rock for the mid to late 90s, but it's good. I don't. There's nothing in this song musically or lyrically with the content that really stands out as great. But it's a good song overall.
Yeah, I mean, this particular like power poppy sound like developed in the early 70s and never really went away. It's just every now and then a song from that genre has a hit. So, the Raspberries made it work, Enough's Enough made it work, and Hole made it work. It's transcended through the decades as a very commercially pleasing sound. It's oftentimes record labels have trouble figuring out how to market power pop bands, and they try to pigeonhole them into being into another genre, so like the mass market accepts them more. But I mean, it fits in very well within the genre, where you put it next to a Raspberries track, you put it next to a Badfinger track or Super Drag track, and it fits very well in that playlist. And I was shocked. I did not see that coming. It really took me by surprise and really made me like reevaluate how I had to listen to the album and what I had to look for, because I wasn't expecting like catchy power pop. I did not see that coming at all.
So you guys realized that you, because my ranking didn't do this, but you guys basically ranked the 3 singles as the top 3 songs.
I
Yep.
mean, the average of our rank, so you
Yeah.
did contribute to that.
I contributed. Okay.
But also, there's something to be said about, that's why they're chosen to be singles,
that's
because
true.
what's going to appeal to most people of differing tastes? Like, what's going to have the biggest chance of success? Because there might be someone who's going to say, oh man, Once and Destroy, that's by far the best song in the album.
Yep.
And then the rest of the record buying public is like, no, that's the worst song on the album. So
Man.
there's something to be said about why certain tracks are chosen as singles. And, there's different histories with this band and the genre. You, Steve Edwards, have had years and years and years of knowing the CD. Steve Smith, you've had years and years and years of at least being familiar with the band's general catalog.
Yep.
Like me, I knew one song, thought it sucked. But then upon, listening to it like 20 years later, I was like, oh, it's fine.
Which song did you say you knew? Which one? Celebrity Skin?
Which is next on the list.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew this song.
Do you not
saw
like
the video?
Do you like the main riff? So yeah, because that's basically, if you don't like that, then you do not like this.
Right.
Here's
genre.
what I would say.
Like,
What I really don't like is the I guess the part where it switches over to the acoustic guitars and gets very soft. That, I think, is what kills the song for me. That's the part I don't like about it. But
that's the Nirvana thing, though. That's the loud to soft. That's
yeah, because Nirvana was the only band to use dynamics.
they are.
Dynamics did not exist before the 90s.
I've never
It's
heard
true.
of them. Yeah.
I mean,
Nirvana did perfect it. As far as commercial music goes, for sure, absolutely.
There have been plenty of examples of loud, soft dynamics throughout music. Nirvana, like, they did a good job with it, but to say that they were the first ones to perfect it, it doesn't necessarily resonate with me. I think what I would say about Nirvana is that the fact that that was like their one thing they could do well, maybe is why they, get credit for perfecting it, 'cause they just did that all the time, and that was their one thing they did.
That's not really a fair way to describe it, in that they could do a lot of things well.
No, I'm being facetious.
I was just, yeah, they sort of optimized that loud, soft, alternating dynamic for this decade, really.
Yeah, if you want to say they perfected for the decade, sure, I'll give you that.
Because I mean, there's a lot of ways to do loud to soft dynamics across a variety of different genres. This was just the one that really stuck. I mean, the '80s sort of thing was that like the biggest songs were a gradual build in dynamics, right? You you start off quieter and then you build and you build and build. So you have like the big solo, and maybe you taper off a little bit with some vocals, but it's a growing progression, whereas this is a loud, soft, loud progression.
I mean, I could give you a bunch of examples of quiet versus loud courses, but I'm not going to bother with that because
I mean, obviously, this is a generalization and not the absolute rule of every song in the 80s starts quiet and then gets loud.
I guess the thing is, it's not, I don't consider it as mind-blowing and revolutionary as a lot of people do. Were like, Nirvana, like, they're the guys who came up with loud, soft, like...
Well, in the mainstream though, with that kind of rock music, they definitely are the ones who popularized it.
They were probably one of the heaviest bands to, really catch the
I guess
attention
because
of
I
people
know
for a
more
while.
songs than you guys, that's why it's
And
not blowing me away. And
They're one of
songs
the
that were
heaviest
top 40
mainstream
hits.
bands too. Nirvana is easily one of the to that point in the mid '90s. They're by far one of the heaviest commercial bands.
Give you that.
Yeah.
And so for them having that,
So for
a
a
heavy dynamic
for a
and
heavy
then
band to
dropping
have a
down.
loud, soft dynamic, that seemed influential. I think a lot of it just comes down to the
it
fact
was
that
influential.
they were down tuned, and that's what'll impress people. Sounds heavier than
That's a lot of bands.
Yeah.
I mean, that's things that like Linkin Park did too.
Linkin Park was.
I disagree.
You know,
I
I'm gonna
think
say
both are
this,
fine,
What,
but-
a hybrid theory better than Nevermind.
Oh,
Putting that out there for the internet.
oh, you're too young.
I
young Padawan.
But yeah, so Celebrity Skin.
wonder about, like-
I'd say the riff is fine. I think it's overall a good song. I'd say at this point I like it. It's just for me, it's the preconceived bias I have of like '90s band trying so hard to be edgy that has sort of burnt me out from it. But I would listen to this song. This song would make the playlist. I'd say it's good. I enjoy it.
This is the best opening track they could have possibly come up with on this album because it bridges, it marries that whole dynamic of their former grunge selves with their pop selves on this record the most of any of the other songs.
Yeah, I can't picture any other songs on this album opening it up, or any of the other whole songs that I know.
And Corgan, who did write this riff, the sad thing about this is that riff is probably the single best moment of the record, in my opinion. Out of
So you're
everything.
saying Billy Corgan might be a more talented musician than Courtney?
I'm saying he may be a better member of Hole than anybody else in Hole.
I mean,
I'm just picturing Billy Corgan up there in a blonde wig.
Dude, I want to see it.
He puts on his blonde wig for his whole appearances.
He's so
he
grumpy.
He puts on
So
his
wait,
red
is
wig.
the blonde woman from that show, the Smash Mouth, is that Courtney Love?
Oh, I mean,
Is that
Rob,
so? That entire Smashing Pumpkins concert we saw was all just like a rock opera about how he's still in love with Courtney Love.
I mean, if you ask Courtney Love, then 100% yes.
And I think I really do think that might be the case.
There are probably elements of her in that character, but that character's,
Well,
from
it's his
what I can
mom
gather,
and Courtney Love.
right? That character is meant to be a gestalt of a lot of different women, theoretical and real. Obviously,
I mean, I think it's
obviously
meant,
the blonde woman in To Martha is just his mom who
yeah,
he misses.
it's meant to be representative of his relationship with women as a feminine force throughout his. So yeah, I mean, I get it. But yeah, Celebrity Skin. It's a catchy single. Any other comments?
Mm-mm.
All right, so before we get to the number one song, let's go through the list in order. Coming in as the least best song, Use Once and Destroy, because it's definitely the least best, and anyone who thinks so is just incorrect.
Move along, Greg.
Next up, then it's followed by Dying, then Petals, Northern Star, Boys on the Radio, Hit So Hard, Heaven Tonight, Playing Your Song, Reasons to Be Beautiful, Awful, Celebrity Skin, but the best song on Celebrity Skin, according to this panel of experts and Steve,
And Steve's.
Malibu.
I wish he would have called it this panel of experts and everybody that's not me. Malibu. Who wrote this? I don't know. Who wrote Malibu?
Is this Corgan
Billy
also?
Corgan.
So this one.
Yeah, this is the most Corgan sounding
it says
song on this album.
It says the music is written by, Courtney. No, not the Courtney, not the music. The music is written by Billy, Eric, and who's this? And Courtney. So lyrics by Courtney, music by Courtney, Billy, and Eric, which to me means that Courtney probably played like a chord on it, and Eric had an idea, and then Billy came in and took it over probably.
See, the way I feel is probably the opposite. I feel like Billy wrote most of it. They changed a couple of things and then got co-write credits.
Maybe
Right.
that's
That's what I'm picturing.
And
Billy
here's-
Corgan wrote most of the song, and then Courtney Love spent most of the song trying to do her best Shirley Manson impression.
So one of the things I really love about this album in particular is the sort of hilarious irony of one of the big critiques that people had with like the hair bands of the 80s was that they weren't good musicians and had to utilize outside songwriters to make their albums good, and that that was bullshit corporate rock. As this album is utilizing outside songwriters and session musicians to make the album sound good, but this genre is legitimate, but that other genre isn't.
well,
Like, I think there's just as much bullshit in both genres, where the vast like snootiness over the superiority of one, I think is silly.
I think for a grunge though, a lot of times if if any of those players didn't play on records, it had more to do with their drug addictions than it had to do with
So
them.
what you're saying that the hair metal musicians maybe need an outside help was not due to drug addictions?
Well, the problem
Have you
with-
heard of the Sunset Strip?
The problem was the hair metal guys were all on coke, which just let them play faster, whereas the grunge people were all on
Do you
heroin,
know how
which
many
made
hair
them
metal
incapable
musicians
of playing.
died from heroin?
Yeah,
Remember
wait,
Nikki Sixx's book, The Heroin Diaries? No,
I didn't actually read
it. But I'm saying there's just as much bullshit in
No,
both genres,
I don't
and
think-
one isn't isn't like that
Nikki
clear
Sixx is a
superiority.
bassist. He doesn't need to be conscious to play.
all
Right.
of the very, very talented grunge bands, your Soundgardens, your Pearl Jams, and Stone Temple Pilots, all those people, they all absolutely played all the instruments on the record.
Right, and you could say the same about the most talented hair bands of the era. I just don't get why one is considered legitimate art and one
think
is
because-
considered trash when they're doing the exact
Duh,
same
because-
thing.
Well, because by the late 90s, people were starting to recognize which aspects of grunge were corporate rock. Like, that was starting to get to the era when Fuel albums came out, and like, people listened to Fuel and weren't like, yeah, this is really deep and meaningful stuff. They're like, okay, this is just trying to be more Nirvana.
And-
Cool. I kind of like how it sounds, though. Yeah, so I'll listen to this one.
Yeah, and I agree. And also, it's just because of what it represented to me and to most people on the outside. The '80s hair metal stuff just represented like just having fun and wanting to bang chicks. And the grunge thing was a lot more introspective. It was about, hey, we're feeling down. We have these stronger emotions than just wanting to get laid.
Sometimes I'm sad and want to bang chicks.
Yeah,
Right.
and that
Sometimes
really
I'm sad because I haven't banged a chick in a while.
And that
Well, yeah,
resonates.
I mean, that was the thing that you've said so many times. The one quote of was it somebody in Kiss was saying that, well, how do grunge bands release a second album after suddenly they're millionaires and all the things they're sad about in the first album aren't problems anymore? Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is a completely valid complaint. I think Paul Stanley said, "What are the grunge bands going to write about how their limo was late?"
They will,
Yeah, they
if
will,
they
yeah.
have to.
That's true. So to me,
I mean,
I never got into the '80s rock stuff because it was too like shiny and happy, and it was just too cheesy for me. It was all about like, oh, I'm got angst too, and I can relate to that. So, and that's why it took off, because we're hitting this post Reagan era where there are more issues and we're talking about it more out in the open. So it really started to connect with people.
I guess my thoughts on it. I think that the '80s bands had a good balance because they did have their songs about social issues. I mean, shoot, White Lion had like a song about Greenpeace, so it's not like they were completely ignoring those things. But I think they were overall happier. And
yeah,
were
and that's
more,
not out in the public.
Well, no,
mindset.
I mean, no, that was a big single for them. That was a hit. I think it's just, I think history, is the expression history is written by the winners. I think there's been sort of a narrative that's been presented about the music of the 80s that isn't necessarily true if you actually look at what came out, what was a hit. Like, I think that's just been, grunge were these revolutionaries, shining in true art. And I think there actually is a level of validity to that statement. But I think it's not as, I think it's a bit more nuanced than people usually give that credit for. Silence.
Well, 'cause yeah.
But yeah, that's a
I don't
catchy
really
song.
feel
I like it.
I don't feel like battling the merit of '80s music versus '90s music. Honestly,
Well, but what I'm saying is the concept of one, a group criticizing the others for bringing in outside songwriters, bringing in session musicians, not being artistically pure, and then as we talk about this album and a lot of those albums which did those things.
but that's
I'm
why.
saying the criticism isn't valid.
But that's why Hole takes so much criticism and why they're not looked upon by the people who love this genre
Could
as
it
being a
be-
great band.
could it be maybe because Courtney Love is a train wreck, barely capable of staying in pitch, not really able to play guitar, is just an unpleasant person? Could it be those reasons why people might critique Hole and not just that they hired, the drummer who'd be in Journey?
I mean, it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, both.
Because
Except I like
I-
her as a person.
because I feel like if it was just the one, so let's just say Courtney Love was a generally likable person, would anyone care as much about the session drummer on this album? Some people would, but I don't think there would be as much criticism.
No, of course not.
Like
I mean,
the way that Billy Corgan, like,
'cause nobody-
if he
she was-
hires a hired gun, they're like, oh, Billy Corgan's a sellout. No one's gonna think Billy Corgan's a sellout.
I mean, if Courtney Love were a generally likable person, what are the odds that she would have hired a session drummer? And like, she would have if she were, you know, doing that sort of PR control
she
of
probably would have fought for her own bandmate. To
right.
play
If she were truly like a nice person, she would have you know, fought for her bandmate. And if it truly was the sort of thing where her bandmate was just too on drugs to be able to do the parts, and if she were a truly nice, likable person, then she would have found a way to deal with it more politically and not just, you know, sort of silently write her out.
And your buddy Dave Grohl, who you got nothing other than good things to say about,
He's really good at the whole loud soft thing.
on the second record, he came back and recorded all the drums without telling the drummer at the time. So for The Color and the Shape, dude had been tracking all the drums. Dave Grohl was not happy with it because he's he wanted it to be a specific way, and obviously he's a great drummer, so he knows exactly how he wants it to be. He came back through, started doing night sessions, recording all of those tracks, didn't tell him. Eventually, it finally came down to a point, and he talked to him and was like, hey, we still want you in the band, we want you to tour and play with us, but I'm playing all of the drums on the records from now on. And that's why the drummer quit. So, I mean, is that not the same kind of thing? You're talking about how great he is. That was a shady thing, too.
But here's what I'll say about that. I actually don't... Like, the whole, like, Billy Corgan telling his bandmates to just leave the studio because he can play the parts better. If you can play the parts better and the other people are just, like, doing a shitty job, yeah, I'm kind of cool with that. I'm completely fine with that.
Well, maybe
doesn't bother me.
maybe this producer convinced Courtney that's what was going on.
Yeah,
We
but
don't know.
I guess what I'm saying is...
You don't view it with as much integrity. If
I
the person who wrote the song says, you're doing a garbage job of playing this part, I will play it myself, versus, you know, the producer saying, hey, this person's doing a garbage job of playing this part, let me bring somebody in.
Yeah, to me that doesn't bother me. If whatever makes the song sound the best, if someone can't turn in the performance that is needed, like I don't necessarily have that, you know, blind loyalty that they have to play on the track. That it has to be the band as marketed to the general public
I do.
on each track.
I feel like it needs to be. And, you know, you were talking about the comparison between 80s and 90s, how you're saying 80s gets a much harder, people view that a lot harder than they view the 90s bands. You take the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys used ringers on almost all
They're
the
my
recordings.
favorite 80s band.
Well, I'm going back even further. I'm saying you don't hear all these people talk about, well, the Beach Boys, you know, Brian Wilson didn't actually play bass in all those songs, or like, you know, they did the same thing.
But
They had studio musicians come in
throughout all decades. Like if anyone has watched that Hired Gun documentary or bothered actually looking into the history of their, you know, albums that they've listened to, like pretty much throughout, you know, most bands
It's an
have
untalked about
ringers
thing, yeah.
on their albums. It's like it's very common. We live in Nashville. This is the city of ringers filling in for people.
I mean, if you want to talk about the Beach Boys, it's probably worth comparing that, like, the Beach Boys are generally well regarded, but they're generally well regarded as being kind of pop fluff compared to, say, the Beatles, who played a lot more of their own instruments and are, produced and engineered their own stuff and are regarded as artistic geniuses.
Well, first of all, they didn't produce and engineer their own. That's
George Martin.
Yeah, that's a completely incorrect statement.
I thought they were involved in a lot of that process.
They were involved.
Also, second of all, the Beatles did use ringers on a lot of their recordings. So
Purdy.
Ringers, I said, not Ringos.
Yeah. So
no, I'm kidding.
There's
and also,
that whole idea
it also
that
comes with the fact that the Beatles
Purdy
wrote
played
better
drums,
music than the Beach Boys. Just period.
I mean, I'm not getting into that. I'm just talking about
I listened to Pet Sounds again the other day. I'm like, I get it, but you're gonna say this is better than Sgt. Pepper's?
Oh,
no,
yeah, absolutely.
You're full of
Sgt.
shit.
Peppers.
Pet Sounds over
Pet
like
Sounds.
Pet Sounds. If Pet Sounds were a Beatles album, it'd be the worst album.
Dude, this is nonsense. Anyway, what does this have to do with Hole?
Yeah, so as we're talking about Malibu,
I've never heard a Beatles song as good as Good Vibrations, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, Good Vibrations is definitely the best Beatles song.
You know what? I'm just gonna barrel through. So Malibu, catchy pop song.
Yeah. And she wrote it in the 80s with Tommy Lee and Gene Simmons. Hey, would you like this record more if it had more Gene Simmons on it?
You do know that I like Kiss in spite of
Okay,
Gene Simmons,
all
right? Like it's
So you're saying you'd like it more if it had more Paul Stanley?
Yeah.
oh, absolutely. Oh man, first of all, a actual good rhythm player on this record.
No, the rhythm guitars are great on this.
Well, yeah, that's fair. But like someone who could play those rhythm parts live.
This next song's called Northern Star.
But actually,
God.
Paul Stanley at this era was singing very well vocally
I
and
wouldn't
was a
listen to
very
it,
good
Paul
rhythm
Stanley.
player. So yeah, this would be a much better album if Paul Stanley sang all these songs.
And see, that's the difference between us, because I don't like Paul Stanley music at all. But
The difference between us is like one of us likes a band and the other one of us doesn't like a band.
yeah, that's the difference.
the
Weird how
only
that
difference.
happens.
Oh my god.
The only difference.
Yeah. The only difference. Basically,
The only
other than that,
difference
we're the
is
same
one of
person.
us likes Paul Stanley, the other one of us
Yeah.
doesn't.
Otherwise,
we're the same
identical.
person. Yeah.
Because as far as Kiss goes to me, I like Gene way more than Paul Stanley.
How many Kiss songs do you know? Like
3.
two?
At least 3.
What are the 3 you know?
Rock and Roll All Night. Rock and Roll All Night Live. And I don't know any other.
So that's
You got
why
me.
that's why you like Gene more than Paul. You don't know any Paul songs.
I've heard Love Gun.
Yeah, that's it. That's fair. Like if Love Gun is not the hill I will die on for Kiss. Love Gun is usually the song I point to as an example as why Kiss fans are dumb. So
But let's put the X in sex.
Yes.
That's the one you'll die on.
yeah,
I'll die.
yeah.
I'll die for it.
Let's put the X in sex. Look, you know what? I'm going to toss this out there for the internet to hate me even more. Let's put the X in sex. Better than Love Gun. Fight me, internet.
Let's put the X in sex better than Malibu by Hole.
I mean, honestly, yes, but
I don't know. I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be the case. I kind of want to be contrarian, but if I'm judging them based sincerely upon pop hooks, actually, yes, but I don't want that to be the case. Because I know that just makes me sound like an asshole.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, I want to be like, yeah, this is a better song, but it's not.
Gene Simmons' cover of Firestarter versus Malibu.
I mean, this is a great song. This is a really good song. So
Firestarter's a great song.
not Gene Simmons' cover, though.
No, that's true.
Are
That
we
is-
talking about Prodigy Firestarter?
Yes.
Gene, I don't even want to think about Gene Simmons covering that.
It is the one of the worst things you will ever hear.
That's
or
true.
s-
We discussed it on an episode, and I said, we're doing that album when we get to it. And Greg was like, no, Steve, you don't have to do this. I was like, no, we're doing it. And then I looked up the video and said, I've made a terrible
And I
mistake.
tried really hard to tell him, like, no, we don't have to do this album, Steve. Really, we can skip it. I was trying really hard.
But I've committed on Mike, so now we got to do it.
Greg, have you ever heard any of Melissa Oftermore's solo stuff?
I have not. This
It's-
was my first.
I think you would like it more than Whole. Like, her solo stuff is really cool.
I mean, I'm definitely open to checking out. And I would say, like, this album has made me more willing to check out Hole as a band. Like, as I've ragged on Courtney Love for not really being a good musician, she's really good at gathering together good musicians to make a good album. So, like, she made this work in the same way that I'm actually not a really good musician, but I'm really good at getting good people around me to make my songs sound good, despite being a terrible player and terrible singer.
Greg
So
is
really,
the Courtney
I-
Love of glam.
Yeah, I'm the
Dude,
Courtney
there you
Love of
go.
glam.
All right.
Except like without the heroin and also not being attractive, so it's way harder for me to get.
I'm gonna say I've
bandmates.
never had any posters of you up on my bedroom door, but maybe that was where I went wrong all
Yeah,
along.
that's where you went wrong. Christina, we're like, why is there a poster of Greg in our bedroom?
He's my new Courtney Love.
I would make a crack about that, but I do have posters of Greg in my bed on my bedroom wall. Oh, now I feel like a weirdo.
All right, well now that's a good point to end the episode.
Yeah.
So plugs, Steve, both Steves, do some
You
plugs.
guys-
We'll do it at the same time.
Hey,
1,
what-
2, 3. You find us
I
on
saw
lipstickgeneration.com for none.
.org. I usually don't talk about them, but when this episode comes out, it'll probably be around the time. So my band, I for None, our debut record comes out on January 18th. and 20 the 19th. So that'll probably be close to that time frame.
Eye for
right?
none, more like eye for fun.
My eye for
Oh shoot, the recording stopped. No, I'm just kidding.
oh god, that's fine. I just thought you meant like
I was
we
going to
gotta
be
go
impressed
back
because
and-
I was like, the screen fell asleep an hour ago.
It might have stopped recording then. And one of my big influences for my songwriting on the record is Courtney Love. So there you go. Check that out. If you don't like Courtney Love, then forget I hate that and still listen to the music anyway. But if you do like her, check it out too. And hold on.
I've listened to these songs. I'd say the upcoming Eye for None record is better than this album.
Well, I would not go that far, but thank you. That's very, very not true.
You heard it
But
here
cool.
first, folks. Eye for None album, not as good as Celebrity Skin.
Oh yeah, for me.
But hey,
That's good. I mean, this is a great
Celebrity Skin
record.
is still. This is a good CD. I'd say there's not like a skip button track in this album. Like there might be songs I'm not as into,
Star.
but it's a fine CD. I would recommend this to most fans of pop music.
I'm gonna find. I'm gonna take a clip of just the ASMR opening. I'm just gonna loop it for 5 hours and send it to other Steve to listen to.
I'm just
when
not
he goes
gonna,
to sleep.
I'm not going to listen to
No,
it.
you have to listen to it. If somebody sends it to you, you have to listen to it. Those are the rules of life. Didn't you know that?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't.
All right, I'm done with my plug.
So, you can find us at lipstickgeneration.com and wherever fine lipstick products are sold.
Like the Mac counter of Sephora.
No,
Or-
I mean really just like at my house.
Okay.
Sometimes,
lipstick
sometimes
products?
Greg's house.
Like any kind of.
Oh,
lipstick?
I see what you're saying.
Dad jokes.
Yeah, we're still working on that. We haven't managed to get our albums into Sephora yet.
You should. That'd be fun.
We're working
Probably
on it.
should. That would. I don't know. Let's put together a pitch, Greg.
All right, let's do it. We'll do this as soon as we're done recording right now.
Oh.
All right, are we starting now?
Hey, I don't know if you know this or not.